Nature isn't just out there in some far-off exotic location. It's all around us, including right outside our doors. Hi, my name is Anthony Trimboli, and I am the host of Backyard Ecology. I invite you to join us as we ignite our curiosity and natural wonder, explore our yards and communities, and improve our local pollinator and wildlife habitat. Hi, everyone. Today we're talking to Anthony Trimboli. Anthony is a wildlife biologist, conservation educator, and as you may have guessed from his last name, my husband. Hi, Anthony. Welcome to Backyard Ecology. Thank you for talking with us today.
Hello, glad to be here.
Now, you and I could talk about all kinds of different things because, like me, you have a pretty broad knowledge base, have worked with all kinds of different species, and really enjoy sharing your love of wildlife and nature with others. But the reason I wanted to have you on the podcast today is to talk about trail cameras because they're such a great way to really observe wildlife and nature and get to see things that oftentimes we wouldn't see if we were just standing out there trying to watch it ourselves. But before we get into that, let's take a few minutes to just tell everyone a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay, I grew up in northern Indiana, so not in Kentucky, but grew up in a house in town, and then we moved to a house that was on the edge of town that had a large park right across the street. I grew up in front of a park also in town. It seems like we always lived by a park, and I was always in there chasing bugs and what few reptiles and amphibians we had in northern Indiana. It wasn't a great place for those kind of things, but I was always after bugs. And I liked wildlife my whole life. Ended up going to Murray State in Kentucky to get a degree in wildlife biology, and worked all kinds of various jobs in wildlife. And then later on in life, I got a master's in agriculture from Western Kentucky University. So I kind of have a diverse background when it comes to outdoorsy kind of things.
Yeah, and you help me with the nursery and the consulting business, and you just do all kinds of fun things. But getting on to the topic for today and talking about trail cameras, I know a lot of times people think about trail cameras as being something for people that have really large properties, and that can be true, but they can even work in smaller properties as well. And so that's why I thought it'd be really fun to talk about today because there's something that we can all use to observe the nature and wildlife in our own yards. And there's so many different types out there. And I know technology has changed, and even just within the last decade, they've gotten better resolution, all kinds of different options with them. So you've been doing a lot of research for us and some of the trail cameras that we want to start looking at getting for our property and replacing some of the old ones that we have. But also you've worked in sporting goods stores and helped people pick out trail cameras for their own property, which is why I asked you to talk about this topic. But let's start at the very beginning. What exactly is a trail camera, in case people don't know, and how do they operate?
Trail cameras are a remote system for seeing what you have on your property, and they were born from wildlife research. The first remote camera system I can remember seeing was a professor from California gave a talk on fisher numbers in California, and they were monitoring them using remote cameras, and they were pretty simple by today's standards. They were Kodak 110s. If people remember those, it's a little rectangular camera. It took a cartridge of film, and it had a manual shutter release on it, and they would actually tie a line to the shutter release and put it on a big meat bait, and whatever grabbed the meat bait would trigger the camera. So you got one picture, and then you'd have to go out there and check it and forward the film and reset the whole thing. So it was a very time consuming and not very efficient way of getting pictures, but they got pictures of things they didn't know were there that way. And soon after those came out, people figured out how to rig up the old 35 millimeter cameras that had auto advance. So you could get 36 pictures at a time. And it wasn't long after that, the first commercial ones came out. And those were film cameras that had motion sensors on them and were used in the hunting industry. And they were pretty popular, even though you got 36 pictures, and it could get real expensive if you had 36 pictures of a bush blowing in the wind in front of your camera because you didn't set it up right. We have advanced well beyond that now. And we have cameras that are digital. We have cameras that are cellular. There's cameras that are linkable. It has gotten a lot more technologically advanced, and as technology advances quickly, so have trail cameras.
Yes, I remember sitting in those original wildlife biology meetings and listening to them talk about the trail cameras and what they were coming up with and the pictures and stuff. So trail cameras are still really big in the wildlife biology field. Lots of great research coming out of them, but also fun to use on our own personal properties too. So you mentioned a couple of the different types of cameras that there are. Can you expand upon those some more and tell us a little bit about their different pros and cons?
Okay, today all the cameras on the market are digital. There are no more film cameras. Thankfully, they were very inefficient. But the ones that run on digital cards, they use an SD card, and most of them will take up to a 64 gigabyte card. That's a lot of pictures. You can store a ton of data, even videos, even long videos on a 64 gigabyte card. The cameras are a lot more efficient. Most of the manufacturers will recommend you use lithium alkaline batteries. And I've had cameras last 9+ months on one set of lithium alkaline batteries. The old cameras would last a month on 6 to 9 D cell batteries. They took a lot of power. These are running on AA's these days. You can hook solar panels to them that will increase your battery life. You can hook bigger battery packs to them that'll increase your battery life. If you have a big enough card or you're running a cell camera or a linkable camera, you could literally put the camera out there in the field and never go look at it for a year and still be able to get your pictures off of it. So things have changed greatly. So the main types today are SD card cameras that you have to go out and take the SD card out of to check. The linkable cameras where you can link several cameras together digitally through a wireless network, and they download to one single camera that you have to check. And they also have those that are cellular linkable. So you can have cameras linked to a cellular transmitter that transmits all the pictures from all the cameras to your cell phone. And you can have single cell phone cameras. So the technology is a lot better than what it was.
Yes, it always amazes me when we start looking at a new trail camera and seeing how far things have advanced even just within a few years with it. And yeah, I mean, if you've just got it in a small backyard, then some of these SD card ones work perfectly fine because you're going to be going in your yard. So you can always just go pull a card, put in another one, go look at what's on the card. But if you've got a larger property, or maybe it's a property that isn't at your house, it's a secondary property that you go to on the weekends or whatever, then having something that maybe sends you the pictures or is linkable might be an even better option for there. Is that what you would say too?
Yes, and it depends on what you're using the camera for. If I'm just trying to see what critters I have on a property and I'm not hunting it and I don't worry about disturbance, SD card camera's fine because I can go out there and check it. If I'm trying to, let's say, I've got trespassing issues or I have people stealing stuff, I may want a cell camera because I need that picture right away. I need to know they're there so I can call the authorities to go take care of it. Also, they're good if I have a really remote place. If it's someplace that's hard to get into, and I've got to climb a half a mountain to get to it, I might want to use a cellular camera or a linkable camera where I can get those images to a point where I don't have to go through all that to get to it. Some areas are just really inaccessible. But I sold a lot of trail cameras to people using them, not to look at animals, but to look for trespassers and poachers. And not just in out of the way places. I was selling them to people that owned businesses in town. It was cheaper for them to buy the trail camera with a cell plan than it was to buy an actual surveillance camera with a cell plan. So you can use these for a lot of different purposes. It's not just for monitoring wildlife. I mean, that's what I use them for 99% of the time, but people buy them for lots of different reasons.
And that's a good point. So these are multi-purpose cameras. You can use them for all kinds of different things. I mean, you can see so much and do so many different things with them. I know of people who are using them to take pictures of pollinators on pollinator patches. I always thought of using them for larger critters like the deer and the turkey and raccoons and stuff like that. But yeah, they work perfectly fine if you set them up properly for taking pictures of pollinators on a patch, especially like if you've got butterflies or something that might be a little bit more skittish if you're trying to stand there 2 inches from them and take a picture. And yeah, you get to see so much behavior too if you get the videos. So that's something else that we probably should talk about. Trail cameras aren't just for taking still pictures anymore. They also can take video pretty frequently. Now, pretty much all cameras now have that capability, right?
Most of the major camera brands are going to be video or still pictures, and even the still pictures, you can set them for burst. So if you're on still picture mode, you can set it for a burst of anywhere from 3 to 10 pictures, and then it'll reset and it'll do it again. You can set the videos from any length. Usually they start at about, I think they're like 5 to 7 second videos on most cameras, and they go up to 2 to 5 minutes of video if you set them for it. I don't recommend setting a video for 5 minutes because most of the time the animal's wandered out of the view and you get 2.5, 3 minutes of nothing. So, it all depends on what you're trying to do. If you're just trying to figure out what's there, a single picture mode is great because you'll get lots of pictures. You can put thousands and thousands and thousands of pictures, even on an 8 GB SD card, and more pictures than you're going to want to sit and go through probably. It'll hold about an 8 GB card will hold roughly 150 30-second videos. So, I mean, that's a lot of video. And if you have your camera set up correctly, you should get decent videos. And that's where most problems come in on trail cams is people don't set them up properly. Almost every camera we had brought back at the store was working perfectly fine, and people just did not take the time to learn their camera and set it up properly. They all have their little quirks.
So you've mentioned setting up cameras properly a couple of times. How would you recommend somebody going to set up a camera, especially if the purpose was to, let's just start with see what's out there?
Okay, first you got to choose a camera. So the choices nowadays are going to be infrared flash if you want black and white nighttime pictures. The only way you're going to get color pictures is to get one with an actual xenon flash like a camera has. So when it goes off, it looks like a lightning flash out in the woods. Some animals are bothered by that and some are not. Deer don't seem to care about a bright flash. A coyote will turn tail and run. And even in the infrared cameras, you have low glow and you have no glow. They're using infrared LEDs to light up the area for the picture. A blackout camera has no visible light at all when it goes off. So nothing appears when that flash goes off. A low glow will have a little bit of red glow and it looks like nothing. And most animals don't pay it any attention, but coyotes and foxes will turn tail and run. They are terrified of it, especially coyotes. If you want to get pictures of coyotes, you need a blackout camera, plain and simple. For general just surveying, you can use any camera out there because you're just trying to see if it's there. You don't really care if you get 15 pictures of the same critter. The deer guys, they want to get 15 pictures of the same critter. So most of them are running blackout cameras now. Or the white flash, just plain old flash bulb, because deer really don't mind it. I don't know why it doesn't bother them. If you're trying to do surveillance on people because you think they're coming in, you want a no glow camera. Obviously, you do not want a bright flash going off. They're going to know your camera's there. They're going to break it, shoot it, steal it. A no glow, they'll never know it's there. So that's your first step is you have to choose your camera. And then they are all different. They're going to have different settings. Most of them have a little menu you click through, just like you're setting up a phone or a computer device. And you're going to have to choose what you want on there. And my advice on that is get on a trail camera board that has a form, and they do exist out there. A lot of the hunting forums will have a trail cam page on it. Find the camera you have and see how people are setting them up. They all have quirks, and you have to play with them a little bit. Sometimes they take better pictures with certain settings, and it makes no sense, but that's just the way they function. And I recommend, if you're trying to take pictures of things that are jumpy, put the camera up higher and aim it down. It tends to have less of an effect on them. And especially people don't look up. Even if you're not trying to find people trespassing on your property, if they happen to be there and they find your camera, it's going to go home with them. So putting them in a position where they can't find it's always good.
Yeah, and putting them up a little bit higher too also helps with some of the wind issues with grasses and stuff, because I know we've had multiple times when we go out, because we're running right now the SD card cameras on our property. And so we'll go out, we'll pull the card, it'll be full, and then it's nothing but grass waving in front of the camera for all of the videos or most of the videos, especially if we've had a really windy day. So if you get it up a little bit higher, you're out of the blowing grasses.
Yeah, that's one of the hard things with a trail cam is some of the best spots that you find to put them in might have too much vegetation, and vegetation moving around will trip the motion sensors if it's big enough, and you'll end up with a lot of junk photos. It's hard to deal with that sometimes. I mean, a lot of the good places to put a camera are going to have cover. It's just the way it is. Even the more open places usually have some bushes or something in the background, and you'll end up with some goofy pictures. And occasionally you'll end up with goofy pictures anyway. An animal triggered it. They don't have instantaneous shutter speeds. If you get a quarter second or less shutter speed, that's really fast. So if a bird zooms across that opening and trips that shutter, it may not be in the picture when it goes off. So you'll just have a picture of nothing or a blur on the edge, and it was a bird. But things happen. It's a remote system. You're not in control of it. So you just kind of have to take what it gives you sometimes.
Yes, and we've had all kinds of fun stuff that we've seen in our videos too. I mean, everything from, like you said, why did it go off? There's nothing here. There's nothing blowing. It wasn't the wind, but okay, something must have flown through and it was too slow to capture it. All the way to deer licking the camera. So you get this deer tongue. So it's just all kinds of fun stuff that you might see.
Oh yeah, you never know what you're going to find on a trail cam when you pull it. That's kind of the fun of it. If you have them down low, you'll get nicer pictures when the camera is at animal level, but you get a lot of animals messing with the camera. Deer, they can hear it. I'm sure they can smell it, and they'll come up and lick the camera. A lot of times raccoons will grab it and try to pull it off the tree and bite it. Coyotes usually don't get near it. As soon as they figure out where the noise is coming from, when the shutter goes off, they're gone. They're super jumpy. Foxes tend to not, you can tell they know it's there, but they don't come to it. And bobcats will look right at it. They know the camera is there and they just don't care. They're pretty fearless. Birds don't pay it any attention. You get some really good shots of birds. If you can get hawks in front of it, or crows working on something, they'll sit there and you'll have video after video after video of them doing whatever it is they're doing. They just pay it no attention. And most of the time, deer don't pay them any attention either. They'll just walk right by them. But if they get up there and they hear it click or they smell it, they'll start licking the camera. Lots of videos of deer noses just right in the camera. You get some weird stuff. You get people occasionally. If there's a crew or something going through your property, you'll get some interesting videos there. I had one set in a place one time, and the cars on the road were actually triggering it. That was kind of annoying because you'd get the school bus and any car that was tall. Trucks, cars didn't really set it off. Trucks and buses, you'd get those, and you got tired of looking at it, and then all of a sudden there'd be a video of an otter running by, and you're like, oh, okay. Just crazy stuff. And you never know what you'll see. We've had videos where a doe was freaking out and you could hear a fawn bawling in the background that I'm sure a coyote had gotten. You'll get pictures of animals walking by with things in their mouth. You'll get pictures of deer that you've never seen ever on your property, and there they are, and there might be 2 or 3 of them, and you're just like, where did they come from? You never see them. and dogs that are running through that you've never seen in the middle of the night. And there they are. You know, you'll see lots of things you didn't realize were there on a trail cam, and occasionally you'll get something that's really awesome. But you'll go through a lot of videos, and then all of a sudden you'll find one that's like, wow, that's really cool. You know, all the pictures of animals are cool, but you know, when a coyote runs by with a fawn in its mouth, or a hawk comes zooming up off the ground with a snake, you know, those are the ones that are pretty interesting.
Yeah, those are the memorable ones that you're still talking about years later, having seen. Not every single raccoon that ran through or something like that. I mean, those are cool too, and you like watching them, but it becomes a little bit more mundane when you see that a million times versus the one in a million video that you can get sometimes. So, one of the things with trail cameras that is so important in making them function once you know the basics of the camera itself is really knowing where to place it in the environment and finding that perfect spot, because animals don't use our habitats equally. I mean, there's certain spots they tend to go to more often that you're more likely to see different behaviors at. Can you give us some hints and tips as to places that we might want to look at or look for on a property that would give us a better chance at seeing some really cool behaviors or more different types of animals?
Yeah, placing a trail camera is a lot like hunting. You want to find the spot where the most animals are going to walk by, and it's a pinch point. So it's the same kind of places that we tend to walk through when we're in the woods because they're easy or we are forced to go there. So on our farm, we have a concrete bridge that crosses a creek, and every critter on this farm walks across that bridge. You can sit out there at night and watch deer cross it. I've seen coyotes cross it, foxes, skunks, coons, everything crosses that bridge because it's a narrow pinch point. It's the easiest way across that creek. Same thing, we have a nice spring that has water in it, that's kind of secluded, has cover around it, and pretty much every animal uses that, especially birds of prey. You get a lot of good videos of birds of prey around that spring. It's shallow water, it's secluded, it has perches around it, and they're just drawn to it. If you have a trail that you drive a UTV down, or even a walking trail through the woods, I can guarantee you almost every animal out there is using it too. They are lazy. They will use as little energy as they can to get around, and that's the easiest place to walk. And you can stick a trail cam on there and you'll get pictures galore of just about anything you can imagine. We had a UTV trail cut down through a pasture, and it was thick stuff. It's not really a pasture anymore. It's more of a wildlife habitat plot, but it's thick, and it's right next to the road. There's houses within 100 yards of where I had the trail cam, and we had pictures of everything from rabbits, squirrels, to bobcats, deer, coyotes. Everything was walking that UTV trail. It was a pretty good spot. Just put it in places where you walk. I mean, if you're walking there, the animals are walking there. Most of them are going to take the easiest route. Sometimes you have a spot that you want to see if they're using, or maybe you've planted a whole bunch of new plants and something's devastating them and you want to find out what it is. Stick the camera there. I mean, you can come up with lots of uses for a camera. You know, if somebody hits a deer on the road and in front of your place and you drug it down into the woods to get it off the road, stick the camera on it, and you will get unbelievable videos. You'll get everything from vultures to owls to every predator on the planet in your area feeding on that carcass. And you might see some things you didn't expect to be there. I've seen lots of interesting things happen on a camera over a deer carcass. They're a good place to put it. It's kind of gross. They are going to eat it. To me, that's the cool part, but they do get crazy, especially vultures. Watching the interactions between black vultures and turkey vultures is pretty interesting, because black vultures are half the size of a turkey vulture and they're super aggressive, and it's just interesting watching them divvy up who's gonna get to eat on it at what time, and they're not nice about it. But yeah, just there's no wrong place to put a trail camera, but if you stick it on pinch points and trails, you're going to get pictures of pretty much everything you have on your property.
Yes. And for smaller properties, it's really easy to go put it out for a day or two, give it a couple of nights and stuff, and then go see what you've got. That's really easy to do. And then if nobody's coming there, adjust and move it to someplace else. If you've got a more remote location or a larger property, then you may not be able to go check it as often, but when you do go check it, if you don't like what you're getting, move it. I mean, that's what we do a lot of times with it. And probably, obviously, if you've got a smaller property, you're not going to drag the dead deer onto a quarter-acre property and watch it. But it is something fun to watch if you've got a larger property and got a place where you can actually do some of that. As you can tell, Anthony and I are both wildlife biologists. We do like watching the predator-prey reactions. So, I mean, it's like with everything, though. You kind of got to pick what works for you in your area.
Yeah, and don't get discouraged if you put a camera out and after a few days you have like 2 photos. Sometimes the critters just don't move. I've put them out on spots I know animals move through, and it's been hot or the weather's been horrible, and there's no pictures on it. And then the weather will change. You get a cool front, or you get just a little bit of a misty rain at night, and you get 150 pictures in 3 days because everything moved. You'll also notice that some animals tend to really get on the camera, and you'll have a lot of pictures of them. Raccoons, they just kind of lumber around. They're not real fast. So even if you have a 30-second video, you might have 5 videos of that same raccoon as it's just kind of roly-polying its way past the camera, checking things out. Possums can be like that. Possums can either move really fast and you'll get 1 picture of them, 1 video of them, or they just sit there and you get a bunch. Deer, a lot of times, if they're browsing past, you'll get several pictures of them. The predators tend to blow through, though. Coyotes, fox, bobcats, you'll get 1 video and they're gone, or you'll get 1 picture and they're gone. They move a lot quicker. Most of the birds, you'll get 1 picture. So even if you go out there, check it after a week and you got 20 pictures, there might still be some really cool stuff on there because you might have got a bird of prey hitting a mouse or something, or you might have a bobcat on there. Bobcats are always impressive. Their eyes are huge, and you can always tell on the nighttime videos when you've got one because they're just these huge, giant, glowing orbs. And then you see the bobcat walk out.
Yeah, we're always excited when we get the bobcats on the camera. They are pretty impressive. And like you said before, they don't care. They just kind of and keep walking if they even pay any attention to the camera at all.
Yeah, I mean, they're the top predator in most of the ecosystems that have them. So they really do not worry about anything. They fear nothing. They're not huge. A 20, 25-pound cat is not gigantic, but that 25-pound cat can kill a 100-pound deer. So they are not weak by any stretch. So they do not fear anything out there.
And the bobcats are one of those species that we never see them, like actually see them in person. But I mean, we get them frequent, well, not infrequently on the trail camera. So I mean, we know we've got a decent population around here.
Yeah, and I would tell people, even if they live, in a fairly urban area, don't be shocked if you get red fox or coyotes on your cameras because they live in town. You're for sure going to get possums, skunks, and coons. But you may see some weird stuff you didn't expect. Bobcats turn up in some weird places. Deer turn up in some weird places, and all the birds of prey. You could get them anywhere, anywhere. Especially if you've got it sitting on a bird feeder at night. I would pretty well expect to see some owls picking mice off below the bird feeder.
Yeah. And I mean, you were talking about what you get to see in urban and suburban areas. I mean, when we were in college, the place you went to see red foxes was driving around the old parts of town in the middle of a college university town, but drive around the old parts of the town with the big houses and the big mature trees and stuff. And you'd see red foxes playing in the yards at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. And it was just pretty common to go out there and see that. But you wouldn't necessarily see that in more rural areas, at least not with that frequency. It wasn't like you could just say, okay, we're going to go look at foxes and go see them in the rural areas, but If you want to go look at foxes, there were places that you could definitely go do that in town.
Yeah, yeah. You can find stuff just about any place. And if you want to get into the trail cam game, you do not have to go out and buy a $600 Reconyx, which is like one of the top of the line cameras out there. You can get a decent camera for around $100. There's a bunch of them on the market. If you're worried about people stealing it, I would get a blackout camera. If you got a camera in town, unless you have it right up next to your house, I would probably get a blackout camera because there's people around, even if they're not in your yard. Some of the neighbors' kids get curious about the thing strapped to the tree and they come take it down. They know it's something. So I would tend to get a blackout camera and keep it out of sight the best you can. You can camouflage them pretty well and, just have some fun with it. If you live out on a larger farm, you've got 40 acres or more, I would be probably looking into, you can either get a whole lot of cameras you have to go to every day, or not every day, but every time you check them to swap out the SD cards, or you could get a linkable system. There's several of them on the market, and you can link, I think the one I was looking at yesterday, I'll link 16 cameras together. You can cover 40 acres really well with 16 cameras. I mean, that's like overkill, quite honestly. That's like research level camera blanketing, but you'll have lots of cool stuff, and you'll definitely understand how animals are moving through your property because you'll have pictures of them coming up on different cameras, which is pretty cool. But you can cover 1,000-acre property with 16 linked cameras pretty well. They also have linkables now that'll link 16 cameras cellularly, so you only have one cell plan. So a lot of the cell cameras, you have to have a cell plan for every camera you have. But on the linkables, you can have one cell plan and you can download pictures from that one linked camera that's downloading them from all the other 15. And you have one cell plan. And when you get the picture, it tells you what camera it came off of, which is pretty slick. The cell plans on cell cameras aren't super expensive. They're reasonable. I don't have a need for a cell camera, so I don't have one. I don't have a remote area I have to go take pictures of. There is nothing I need to have a picture of immediately. It's not gonna break my heart if I get it a week later, or I'd go download it, 3 days later. It's no big deal. I'm not trying to catch trespassers. I'm not trying to trap feral hogs. That's one of the main uses of those cell cameras right now. The guys doing feral hog eradication use them because they know when the pigs are in their trap and they can fire the corral trap on them. So they're using them for wildlife work right now. The cell camera got adopted quickly for wildlife work, and it's helped out a lot in those kind of things. If I'm trying to catch somebody breaking into my garage, yeah, that would be great, but I'm not. So I would go with linkables if you've got a lot of land and you want to make it easy to get your pictures, and maybe you're trying to figure out how things are moving through. It's just interesting to know, oh, the deer came off my neighbor's property at 2:00 in the morning, and then they feed all across the backside, and then they bed down in the front field, and then they get up at 11:00 a.m. and walk back to the neighbor's property and drink out of their pond and go to sleep. And you can figure all that out if you got linkables, and it's just kind of neat, especially if you want to go take pictures of them with your real camera because you know where they are. So there's lots of things you can do. You're going to spend a lot more money on a linkable system. There's a lot more cameras involved. It gets more expensive. Cellular cameras have come down. When they first came on the market, they were about $300-400 for one camera. And now I've seen them down under 200. So the price has come down now that technology has improved. And that's the way it is with all these cameras. I mean, the first digital cameras came out, they were super expensive. And they're all reasonable now. Just don't go buy a really, really cheap camera because it's not going to last. They just don't hold up as well, and they tend to malfunction more. That's the main thing, is just don't cheap out completely on it. Don't go buy a $50 digital camera. It's not going to work, not for very long. Also, don't get too wound up on megapixels. A lot of the camera companies are like 24 megapixels, 20 megapixels. That's great if you want to blow the picture up to put on your living room wall. You don't need that kind of resolution to look at a picture on a computer and have it look really nice, unless you're planning on publishing stuff. Yeah, don't worry about it. And even most magazines, they only require 12 megapixels. Most cameras today are 12 megapixels or better. You're going to get a beautiful picture on it if it's set up right and the sun's not shining in it and glaring it all out. You're going to have beautiful pictures. You don't need 20 megapixels. Don't pay a bunch of extra money for a 20 megapixel camera if they have the exact same camera that's like a 12 megapixel camera. You're not going to notice any difference on your computer screen. Like I said, unless you're going to blow up a poster that's like 8 feet by 8 feet, you don't need 20 megapixels. You just don't.
And that's all really good information too for figuring out what we actually need. So yes, thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, when you get into trail cams, be ready to get addicted to it because it's pretty awesome when you start getting pictures, and then you'll start buying cameras to put on other people's properties and your relatives' properties, and then you'll start getting double cameras on one spot, so you're getting pictures of the animal from two different directions, and it gets very, very rabbit holey very quickly in trail cams because they're fun. And like I said, buy a decent camera. They will last you a while. The better cameras can take being out there for a long period of time. The biggest part is going to be batteries. You'll go through a lot of batteries. You'll end up probably buying solar panels for a lot of them to help increase the life. Like I said, you can get really into this. You can buy protective cages for them, which if you're in bear country, I'd recommend getting a bear proof enclosure for your cameras because bears will eat them. They can hear them go off. And as soon as they pinpoint it, they realize it's something different. Bears are curious. They're just like a giant raccoon. And when they grab the camera with their paws and their teeth, they just smash it to a million pieces because it's made out of plastic. So you have to have a steel enclosure for them. And you'll still find them with tooth marks on them. They will try to bite them off the tree. They're super curious. Big bucks, when they get antlers, sometimes they'll knock them around on a tree. So you might want to have an enclosure on them in that case too. That's another reason to put them up a little higher. It keeps a lot of the critters off of them. Bears notwithstanding, if the tree's really small, they'll just knock the whole tree over and then eat your camera. So be aware of that. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. And with the technology we have today, you get pictures that we only would have dreamed about back in the old Kodak 110 days, where you might get a picture of half a mountain lion or, a bear's arm because they just were out of position when they finally triggered it. You'll get videos that are really cool and they have sound to them too. So it's pretty awesome. Your pictures at night are going to be in black and white. Just be aware of that. They are not going to be color. I don't know of anybody that's got color video right now because you can't have that xenon strobe go off for more than a billionth of a second. It just flashes and that's it. So,
and when you say no color video, you're talking no nighttime color video.
No nighttime color video. Yeah, your daytime videos will be color. They'll look beautiful. I mean, there's whole YouTube channels where people do nothing but download trail cam footage, and it's good enough to put on YouTube. So, you get some really high resolution stuff off of trail cams these days.
Oh yeah, we've had some really interesting videos like we've talked about already just on our property, and we don't have top of the line cameras at all. We've got, well, what was about 5 years ago, lower mid-grade, would you say, Anthony?
I'd call them mid-grade cameras. They were mid-grade in the just straight up digital camera field. They were bought when cell cameras were just coming out, and the cell cameras were all the rage. So you were getting some decent mid-grade just digital cameras pretty cheaply compared to what they were because everybody's putting them on sale because everybody was buying up cell cameras. I think a lot of people bought cell cameras that did not need a cell camera. They just bought it because they thought it was cool, and then they realized they had to pay for the cell plan for it. I mean, they'll give you pictures for free on every one of them per month, but the number of pictures is so low that you're going to end up buying the plan. because you want more, because it's like anything, you kind of get addicted to it, and it's like, man, I need my pictures. And today everything wants everything instantly. So those cell cams were selling like hotcakes. And I knew it wouldn't be long before they came down in price. I knew somebody would figure out a way to do it cheaper, and they did very quickly.
But that's true with all technology. It's always getting better. And we're moving so fast right now, and trail cameras are no different.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The link systems have been around for a while, but they are way better than they used to be. The range on it, you can get a range of over 2 miles by sticking cameras into the line. You can get up to about 2 miles away from your downloader, or you can stick just a repeater in the middle of them that are way cheaper than the cameras if you don't want pictures at that spot, and you can still boost that signal back to your home camera where you are able to download. So technology's really gotten better, and you can find the cell phone cameras now. When they first came out, they were basically AT&T. That was all you could get, and now you can get them on just about every major cellular carrier out there. So, I don't know where the tech's going to go from here, because it's gotten pretty fancy pretty quickly. I don't know where they're going to go next, but I'm sure they're working on it.
Oh, yes. And with those linkables, I'm assuming you need line of sight for those?
Line of sight.
Okay.
So if you have a hill in the way, you stick another camera on top of the hill or a repeater. Yeah. So in hillier terrain, you have to get a little more creative with it and really think about where you're going to put your cameras. On fairly flat land, you can really stretch them out. I mean, they've almost got, I think it's half a mile to 3/4 of a mile of range between cameras, line of sight, which that's a long way. I mean, you've got to own a lot of property to have that. I mean, you have to have a section where you're worrying about half a mile of range.
Right.
And even then, it's 2 cameras and you're across it. So not a big deal.
Yes. But here in mostly Eastern United States, we've got a lot of hills. Some are bigger, some are smaller, but there's still a lot of hills around here.
We have a lot of hills, but like I said, if you plan it out, you can get around that.
Oh, yeah.
You can figure out how to get around that. But most properties aren't huge either. I would say most properties that people are dealing with are under 200 acres. So,
right,
you're going to be able to get coverage on your farm, unless it is straight up and down valleys and gorges, which most places are not going to be. So
I just know even on our property, which is only 40 acres, actually slightly less than that, we've got some hills. It's not always completely straight.
We got some hills, but it's almost all one slope.
Yes.
So the slope goes in one direction. So line of sight's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
You can get line of sight pretty easily on our place.
Oh, yeah. There's definitely ways to work around it, like you said. If you've only got one side of the hill, or mostly only one side of the hill, then that still works very well. Do you have any other stories or things that you want to share with us?
Well, probably the weirdest video we ever got was one where it looks like there's nothing on the video, and there's a fallen tree kind of in a field next to the camera. And this little critter runs down the tree and up the little tiny branches, and then just jumps off into another bush. And all we can figure out is it was either a weasel or a flying squirrel. And that's about it, because you can't really make him out. All you can tell is he's a little critter. And by little critter, I mean little critter like the size of your hand, or maybe a little bigger than a mouse. But it climbed up some branches that were teeny tiny. So it had to be small. So I don't know if it was a flying squirrel or a weasel. We don't know. He never came back, never saw him again. I know there's flying squirrels on our farm, so chance it could have been one of those. And sometimes you get stuff like that. You just never know what it is. You're like, wow, that's interesting. And sometimes you'll get pictures of just random stuff that's, a crow flies into the picture and he's carrying some random piece of garbage. And it's just weird, because you don't expect to see a crow carrying like a bottle cap or something, but it seems like they always are picking up weird stuff. and they didn't get it where the picture was taken because it wasn't there. So they had to have brought it with them.
Yeah, you never know what you're going to see on the videos, which is 3/4 of the fun, really, is just what can we see? That's the discovery part of it. One of the things that I remember, we had the camera on the pond and there was an owl. It was either going after frogs in the pond or going after fish towards the surface of the pond, but it was going down, it was hitting the water and coming back up. And we've got a clip or two of that, which I thought was really cool and interesting. That's not a behavior you typically see very often. So this has been fun. If our listeners have questions about trail cameras, can they contact you and ask you about them?
Yes, they can send me an email, and I will let you give them my email address, and they can just send them to me. I have quite a bit of experience with trail cams of all kinds of makes and models. I used to work at a sporting goods store. We carried pretty much everything on the market, trail cam wise, from super, super cheap to top of the line $800 Reconyx units, which most people are probably not going to need, but they do take beautiful pictures and they take a lot of them and they take them for years and years. So you do kind of get what you pay for on most trail cams. If it's $50, I wouldn't expect it to last 6 months. It's probably going to break. If it's a Reconyx, it's going to last forever. If it's a high end of any of the major brands, usually they do okay. And there's a bunch of brands out there you can't buy from stores. There are some that are direct to consumer only. Usually those are the made in the United States, smaller brands. They are good, but you just don't hear a lot about them. They don't have the advertising or the marketing push that some of the other ones do. They tend to go by word of mouth. But there's a few of those out there that are really good cameras for the money.
Yes, and I will definitely put your email address in the show notes so that everybody can find that very easily, because I know lots of people are like us and listen to podcasts when they're driving or doing other things. So saying an email address out loud is not going to work very well. So I always put all of that in the show notes, so very easy for people to find. But yes, thanks again so much for talking with us today. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye. I appreciate Anthony taking the time to talk with us today. I always really enjoy looking at the pictures and watching the videos captured by the trail cameras on our property. The videos are always my favorite because you get to see more of the behaviors than you do with the still photos. But either way, we just never know what we are going to see when we pull the SD card from the cameras and begin going through the images. As far as trail cameras go, our cameras are starting to get up there in age. So lately we've been researching and discussing what to replace them with. Just like with any other piece of technology, picking the right trail camera starts with knowing what you want it to do and then finding the features that will best accomplish those objectives. And with two of us, that becomes a little more complicated because while we agree on how important many of the features are to us, there are some features that are more important to one of us than to the other. For example, video capabilities are much more important to me than they are to Anthony, and we really want to find a camera that will make us both happy. As Anthony and I have been having our own discussions and doing our own research, I realized that many of you may also enjoy learning a little bit about trail cameras and the opportunities they can provide to see things that you may otherwise miss. And so that's why I decided to do this episode. I hope you enjoy this episode and that it helped you think about whether a trail camera might be a fun way to watch some of the wildlife that uses your yard or property too. Before I wrap this up, I wanted to ask a favor of you. If you find value in the Backyard Ecology content, please consider joining our community of supporters. There are many ways you can support Backyard Ecology, both financially and non-financially. Learn more at www.backyardecology.net/join-us. Or again, just go to the show notes and click on the link there. And until next week, I encourage you to take some time to enjoy the nature in your own yard and community.